Hello, welcome to another Spark Outbound Live. Today we're going to be discussing an industry that is very closely related to Spark Outbound in the sense that it was massively disrupted due to COVID and caused a whole lot of people to switch their approach to lead generation and move to things like digital channels like outreach, moving on LinkedIn, doing digital ads. And so basically that is live in-person events, trade shows, networking groups, and the such. So I'm Jonathan Sellers, CEO of Spark Outbound, and today joining me is our Director of Operations, Simon Bowyer. We're gonna talk a little bit about what I was just mentioning about how things were uh, really impacted, and a lot of businesses had their world turned upside down due to COVID and had to make big pivots to be able to keep business opportunities coming in and just give some insight. Saman is our director of operations and also our country director for our South Africa team, and so she's going to provide a little bit of insight, and we're going to discuss how things are both in the U.S. but also in other areas around the world, and so how this could be, it could be different depending on where you are right now. So as always, Spark Outbound on our lives, we always talk about uh, lead generation, digital marketing, marketing strategy, um, ways to grow your business in general, or, tactics, tools, strategies that you can implement or we use for our clients. And so if you're interested in that type of content, please subscribe to our channel. And if you're really interested, click the notification bell so you'll get a notification every time we go live or post a new video on YouTube. So today I want to start off and jump right into getting some thoughts from Simon about um, you know, a lot of people who might be watching this are in the US. So in the US, we are reopening rapidly, or places are already open. Um, you know, we see concerts being booked and things like this all the time, concerts happening. We see baseball stadiums and, you know, other events fully packed. We got the NHL playoffs going on, NBA playoffs going on. There's fans everywhere. So we see a reality that we're feeling here. But I wanted to immediately jump in and get some perspective on, how are things going around the world? And so let's just start with South Africa. So Simon, give an update as we sit today on June 24th, 2021, with where South Africa is with this type of situation.
Sure. So it was actually last week that our lockdown level was up to lockdown level 3. So we have 5 lockdown levels, 5 being the harshest and 1 being the lowest. So we've recently been moved up to lockdown level 3 due to the third wave of COVID that is supposedly hitting now. And we are seeing that trend within our hospitals, the increased number of COVID cases. Um, and with the higher lockdown comes more restrictions for us, even in our daily lives. So things like we have a curfew, we have to be at home by 10 p.m. at night, and you can only leave at 4 a.m. in the morning again. I know this differs in some countries, but for us, masks are compulsory when you're out in public. One can be prosecuted or fined if you're found not wearing a mask. Social distancing is huge, which is a factor in terms of in-person events. And we also have limits on the number of people that can be at an event. So under lockdown level 3, don't quote me 100%, but it's roughly 100 people indoors and 100 people outdoors and 50 people indoors. Um, with social distancing. And if your space is too small to be able to have 50 social distancing, the amount is even less. And so this is like our reality today on the 24th of June. But this has been well over a year, so it almost feels like in the US, you're getting to a sense of normal with concerts and events going on. We're far away from that. Our events industry is completely shut down. There are no live events, no live concerts. But this has almost become our new normal. And we've just adjusted to it. It is what life is for us right now.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, like you said at the end there, so the events industry there is essentially at a standstill, which it was worldwide for a very long time, and I think it's just shifting, it's just changing in certain areas. So we had an event that we have been trying to go to for 2 years, and it will be 3 years before from the time where we agreed to go to the event to till we actually get to the event. So we engaged with an event in London in England, the UK Business Show, very large show, like normally 25,000 attendees, something like that. And so so I was going to be speaking there on a topic related to lead generation, and um, we were going to have a booth or a stand stall, depending on where you are, what you call that. And so we literally booked that at the beginning of COVID. So 2020, roughly end of March or sometime around then. Um, Maybe bad decision, but we booked it then. So it was supposed to happen November 2020. Obviously, that didn't happen. They move it to June 2021. That doesn't happen. That it should have happened like a week ago. They realized that that the reopening of the UK government was so uncertain, so they moved it to November 2021. From our perspective, even just last week, I believe, or the week before last, the UK government decided to delay their full reopening yet again until July. Still uncertain if that date will be met as well. We made the decision to contact the event company and defer even if they have the event in November 2021, we will defer to November 2022, which they were very, they were great about it. It's no problem. They understand. As of right now, it's from an international flight perspective, there are flights. They're very expensive, from the perspective of comparing it to 2020, like before COVID 2020, flight to London from Tampa compared to now is significantly more expensive. And it's just a lot of uncertainty around it. So, we um, made the decision to just delay. And so it is what it is. So hopefully in 2022, we will be participating in that event. So I think there's a couple different ways to look at in-person events from a lead generation standpoint. So if you're a business development person, you're a business owner, and you use events to grow your leads and find opportunities, I think there's two buckets of events that really are where you're going to get those. One is the bigger trade show, the more formal event, and the other are what I just grouped together as networking events. And so those can have a lot of different formats, but I think there's networking organizations where you join and you attend continuously. So if this is like BNI think that stands for Business Networking International. That's a very large organization. They have local groups. I've been in one years and years ago, but it is a commitment. You join a group, you're with the same people, you go to the same place every week. It's an expectation that you show up. When I was in there, I remember like if you were absent too many times, you would get kicked out of the group. So those type of networking groups are work. It's like you're making a commitment. So you could alternatively make a commitment that you're going to create a lot of content or you're going to run ads. So some of those people say instead of that, we're going to really focus on this networking group. Then there's also, um, I think, less formal, uh, scenarios where you have, maybe one-offs, just an organization randomly has events and they bring people together, and so there might be a charge for those events individually, or there might be it might be charity based or something like that. And then I think there's also more social type organizations where you are a member, but it's not the same thing as the networking group where you have these these expectations of giving referrals and things. It's just more that you're part of this community and you're talking. Um, so what I see is like a two-tiered thing here. So speaking here, meaning I'm based in Tampa, Florida. So Florida obviously has certain levels of opening and things are happening that may not even be happening in certain other states. And so if you see this and you're outside the states, we have what I would consider fairly complicated situation where each state may have different levels of rules and opening and how do you operate and what are the protocols. It could be very different, even in some cases, city by city or county by county, things like that. There are differences. So it's a little tricky to navigate that. But so we're having, and I did, a couple a few weeks ago, I guess, I did some research in this market and I was asking people what local events are available. What I was finding was really a few different organizations were kind of taking the lead and they were starting back doing something. So whether it's like I think one's called like West Shore Alliance. West Shore is a major thoroughfare here. It's a major road. There's also an area of the city that's known as West Shore. So West Shore Alliance is a business networking group which has a huge following. So I got that from a lot of people that was an event to look into. And then there's a few of those other groups, kind of like the BNI style groups, that were also starting back their in-person meetings. So I got that. But what I didn't get from any of that, and I had literally a couple hundred people responded to me. It was a great response. I appreciate everybody who gave the feedback and gave the suggestions. None of them, not a single person, knew of a big event. So like a trade show or anything like that. So in the Simone, I'm going to throw this to you, and I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this because I haven't discussed this with you yet. But I know the Cape Town Chamber is very, very active. So I get all their emails. They send me all these emails and all these events and webinars and stuff. Before it went back to level three, were they having in-person events?
I don't know offhand, to be honest. I would assume that if they were, they would not have been um, really large events because we've always had restrictions in some form in terms of gatherings, how many people in a venue, etc. So there would have always, yeah, there would have always been some level of restriction in terms of events.
Okay. Yeah, so I know that the ones I'm getting more recently are all webinars. It's
Mm.
someone is presenting a topic in a webinar and it's on X date, whatever the date is and everything like that. So that has been really the method for most everybody thinking in events in an event sense for the last year and a half is we're going to do a digital event. Um, so not to be too negative, but I personally do not like digital events. Like if I'm sitting at my computer, it's very hard for me not to do work. So it's very hard for me to say I'm going to sit here and pay attention to these people speaking and to these presentations while I'm also having many other things that I could be doing for clients or for Spark Outbound. So, what are your thoughts on that, Simone? Like, so I guess just 100% personal preference. If you had to choose, do you prefer in-person events or live events? or not in-person events or digital events?
um, I do I do think that I would tend towards live events, and I mean I think one of the biggest things that we've been faced with is the lack of face-to-face communication, and I think there's so much value in that. And I know that we've adapted through digital means and video calls, webinars, etc. But I do feel that there is an element that can't be conveyed through video in the same way as which it could be in a live event. Um, and I agree with you. I must say, if I'm at my desk and I'm working and I'm trying to attend to a webinar, it is very difficult to focus 100% on what is being said. If emails are coming through or whatever it may be, where if I'm at a live event, there's less outside distractions. And I feel like I would be more physically and mentally, well, literally physically present in the space, which in a way makes me more present than I would be sitting at my laptop watching it.
Yeah. I mean that I've really been feeling that. So before COVID, I'm, I'm not a, I don't view myself as like I'm a traveler, but regularly I travel to, to go for business to events like this. And I do feel like I feel like this like need to go do it. And I know a lot of people, there's this huge push that, just working preferences and things like that. People want to always work remote and things like that. And that's fine. That is personal preference, and companies, if it works, it works. And if it, it is what it is. So, but yeah, I do think I predict as countries reopen and as the um, event industry is able to safely reopen in each country, I do predict a huge resurgence of people going to events. And I think even people who rarely went to events before, if they get the opportunity, will go because of this. I think there truly is something to like when you're going to an industry event or like large companies and you have events about your company. I think there's something to like a motivational factor that you gain from the event because you're around a lot of other like-minded people and like you feel the energy. Um, and then also just just I do think I think like the work life thing, I think while people can be maybe more efficient working remotely, I think there really is something to breaking that up. So to losing a little bit of the monotony to being able to get out of that environment, and it can recharge and reset your brain in a good way. So I see a large resurgence, and I'm also seeing that. So in the US from some of the larger event companies. So like Digital Summit is an organization that comes to Tampa annually, and so they get really awesome digital marketing, influencer speakers. And yeah, they just made in the last couple of weeks, they just made an announcement for, um, I believe, I'm not 100% sure. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I'm fairly certain that fall and winter of this year, they're jump starting in-person events in several locations. Typically, it seemed to me that they were choosing locations that are more open, so the states have more lax requirements at this time, which would make sense. But it was almost like for the last month, it's almost like there's days where it's like every hour there's something new coming out that's like, here's this event that's happening, here's this concert tour that was scheduled for 2020 and now it's back and it's coming this fall of 2021 in the US. So it is exciting, but it's also not, if you live in the US, maybe that's you don't care about anything else. For us, we do, have obviously Simon and the team are in Cape Town. We have clients who come from other places as well. And so it is of a concern for us because it affects what we can do, how we do it, and things like that. So, um, you know, we do have aspirations for other markets and things like this. And so we have to understand this from the perspective of, although things are happening, the way they are here, does not mean people perceive the situation to be the same, or it's not the same in other places. So, um, I guess if I was gonna talk about, you know, some not necessarily concerns, but like, how do you approach going to the first big, big or small in-person event? I guess if it's small, it's a little bit easier. So if maybe if you're vaccinated, you feel safer. And if you feel like the other people there are vaccinated, you feel safer. If it's a small event, and this is your first time going out and doing something, and you've truly been, basically, uh, staying inside primarily for a year and a half, you might be anxious. Um, I would say that's a little different though than going to a bigger event where there could be like 1,000 or thousands of people coming into a space. So if you're going there for lead gen, you know, I think this is one thing I would look for, and I think a lot of event companies already did this, right? But I think it's even more reason for other event companies to look into this type of thing. If I was going and I was going to pay for a larger event, so speaking of like the UK business show, something like that, there's going to be thousands of attendees is the expectation. We hope to go there and get lots of leads, whatever that number is, and then be able to follow up with those leads. I think one crucial thing that I would be looking for is that they're using technology to acquire those leads. And what I mean by that specifically is, very commonly larger events, they will provide you, if you have a booth or a stand, um, with like almost like a it's almost like a QR code reader or a barcode scanner, and then the attendees will typically have like a name badge, and there will be a barcode or a QR code on their name badge. I don't have one with me, but yeah, and so typically rather than having to necessarily exchange business cards or touch each other at all, if you don't feel comfortable doing so, you can just scan that, um, and there you go. You got the person's information, and it was a relatively safe interaction. I know there's people on here who might say, I don't care about that. I'm going to shake everybody's hand. That's fine. Then you don't have this concern that we're discussing right now, but some people do have this concern. So that's why we're talking about this. So if you are concerned, if you're concerned about yourself or your team, this is something that I would ask when vetting events, right? So I would say, do you provide this technology? Is this an option? Sometimes it costs extra. Um, Another thing in that line of thinking is, and this is something that I see very prevalently in the restaurant industry here, and I do want to get your thoughts on this one, Simon, about how things are in Cape Town. So for this exact same reason, the restaurant industry didn't want to be handing out menus. So it was deemed that that could be a contact point that could be avoided. So what most restaurants, at least especially around Tampa, I've done some traveling outside of Tampa, and this is also prevalent in other areas, is to have a QR code on the table. And then you can literally, if you have a smartphone, you just open your smartphone to your camera, hold it over the QR code, and it pops up a link and says, here's our menu. And so every person just has the menu on their phone. No one has to touch any menus. So I would say, should you consider using that type of technology to deliver your collateral to trade show booth attendees, people who stop by to talk to you? Should you implement something like that? So it actually does two things. Number one, it saves you on printing stuff, saves you on shipping because paper is very heavy, and I'm not downing paper people, but it just could make things a little more efficient. On the downside, so what's the downside of this? If it just goes to them via email or something like that, or like how are you actually, you got to think through the process of how are you getting it to the person? Does it just become one of a million emails they get, versus maybe they would see the paper when they get back and remember you, so you have to weigh that out. And maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe you have that, but somebody who's very interested, you have something physical to give to them. So, but Simone, what are you seeing technology like that used at restaurants there with the menus, the QR codes, or anything like that?
So I remember when you first told us about the QR codes in Tampa for ordering, and I thought, like, wow, that's a brilliant idea. We do not have that. Um, so some restaurants either they have a shorter menu and they print it on paper, so they literally then throw it away after each person.
Okay.
Um, I have noticed that some have, if they have laminated menus, or if it's not just paper, they will then sanitize the menu after every person's used it and then hand it out. um, but yeah, we don't have um, the technology like you have.
I've seen that as well, that restaurants that do use
Mm.
laminated menus, and they spray them and wipe it after every time. So yeah, not every restaurant has it, but it became very prevalent very quickly in Tampa. So it was something that I don't know how, I don't know, is the technology like a vendor, like a specific vendor that does it, or if it's just general technology that's available. I'm not exactly sure how it works. I haven't looked into it, but I do know that was something we talked about this. So we discussed this internally, that what if we um, printed, so when we go to another event, what if we did something like this where as our backdrop, we literally printed a large QR code onto that backdrop? Or we also mentioned one time wearing shirts with QR codes on the back. So yeah, I think there are a lot of options around that. I did confirm that you can print QR codes and they work on cloth. So just for anybody who's immediately thinking about that, it is possible. There are multiple solutions out there to allow that. So, but yeah, I would be thinking those type of things, right? If I'm concerned. If I'm not concerned, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go to the event and operate as I did in the past. But if I'm trying to be more post-COVID aware in my approach, then I would want to look at those technologies. Does the event have this lead gen technology? And I will tell you the real benefit of that is you're going to get a more complete data set for that attendee, because typically what you're going to receive is all their information. So that's my experience. In my experience, when people let you scan their card, you receive, all their name, their contact details, everything that they provided to the event, and authorize the event to share. So that's going to be typically more than maybe what's even on a business card, or if they're filling out something at your stand. Um, and then so that's the one side, is how do you get their information and have a lead. The other side is how do you get your brand and keep your brand in front of them. And so I think the QR code, potentially, that something like that, some type of strategy like that, is a way to get the information to them. And then obviously having the follow-up plan in place before you go to the event is critical. So if you're getting that information from the event, you're able to typically download that into a CSV or some type of file, and then upload it into your email marketing platform. And so then, but you want to have a thorough, thought out, ready to go campaign where essentially that day, theoretically, you could be exporting out your leads for that day if it's a multi-day event, and putting those people in and putting them into an action step. So now you're going to get that message in front of those people. That none of them are going to fall through the cracks. So I think that is really, if I'm saying, are you ready to get back out there from the perspective of lead generation? We're going to an event to generate leads, to get this program back going that we were doing in the past, or we're so excited to get into an in-person event. We've never done it before. What do we do? I think those are some things to think about is how are you going to acquire data at this event in this post-COVID world, no matter where you are in the world, as you can go to this event. How are you going to do this in a way where you're not going to turn people off? Because this is the thing people have to understand is whether or not you feel a certain way about the situation or not does not matter when you're in a lead gen, when your objective is lead gen. Because if you think I don't care if people shake my hand, I'm going to shake hands. I don't care about any of these concerns or anything like that. That's fine. But if the audience that you're talking to does care and you're relying on being able to shake everybody's hand, but nobody wants to touch you, you're not going to have a as successful of a program as you could. So this is where you have to get into the mindset of the person you're trying to connect. So I think it's, do I have a good plan that's going to make people comfortable to give me their information? It's going to be easy for them and comfortable for them to give me their information. Do I have a way that's going to be easy and comfortable for people to receive my information? And then do I have a follow-up plan in place so I can stay in front of them? So I think all three of those are going to be your most critical things for your first shows back. And this is big shows. Networking is different. Every networking group has its own protocols, and I think you just have to adjust to that. I think they're going to guide you on the expected way to interact and communicate and everything like that. So I don't think there's so much thought to go into that. But I'm very anxious and really want to get back into bigger shows. I like going to talk to people who may be interested or have a need for what we do, but I also like to go to attend and listen to keynote speeches and things like that. I like to see the competitive world around us, like who else is exhibiting at the show. I like going to shows and seeing booths and talking to people and learning things. So I'm super excited, and I'm also super excited for the first show that we can go to in Cape Town. Like I'm very ready to make that very long flight and get there as soon as possible. But I also know that that is not in the short term. So we know that that's probably 2022 at some point, hopefully. So is there anything I said maybe that you also, I know we were talking earlier today, you were mentioning a couple other things. Was there anything else that you think people should be concerned about or just aware of, Simone?
Yes, I agree with a lot of what you were saying. I know that you were speaking about bigger events, and I was just thinking as you were talking, and it is something you did touch on. But if you're looking at a big event where you are wanting to have international people come, the flight is a huge thing to consider. I know for South Africa, we are not allowed into most countries at the moment. And I think that I don't know if it's called the red list. I think every country calls it something else. But I know for the UK specifically, we still cannot fly directly into the UK. So I think that is if your target audience, if you're wanting to get international people, that could be a factor at this stage to consider. And then this is just, I mean, this is my perspective, obviously being in South Africa. And so just speaking of vaccinations, you did touch on that as well. And for us, we have a vaccine rollout plan, which I think everyone does. And at the moment, it's frontline workers and over 60s. So it's still a long time till it gets to the majority of the population, which I think is a factor as well. Yeah, I'm not even sure if you can. Anyway, I'll leave that for another day. But I think that is a factor. And then also, and this is something that is relevant to me, there is a very strong suggestion that if one is over 60 or they have comorbidities, that you are more careful and do isolate and that you don't go to bigger events. And I think that is something important to consider. Does that affect your target audience? And I think that's a hard thing to actually know. Age is almost an easier factor to see, but when it comes to comorbidities, we can't see that. There's no way of us knowing.
Right.
So I guess it's a bit of a risk that you do take because we just don't know. But I do think it is something to consider. And as a solution to that, I know people speak about having hybrid. I'm not sure logistically how well that would work. Having an in live event and then also having it available online at the same time. That would be quite a nightmare, I think, to try and coordinate and with sound and all of that. I don't
Yeah.
think it's possible. So yeah, I think there are a lot of, and then obviously the points that you've raised as well of what to consider when going back to in-person events. And I do think there are endless things for one to consider. This is new for all of us. None of us have been through this before, and yeah, we kind of just have to take it one step at a time, and bearing in mind that every country is different. We are all at a different stage, or even like in the US where you are, different states can have different regulations. So there's a lot to keep in mind, but I do look forward to the day when we can interact face to face on a more regular basis and just get back out there.
Yeah, I'm interested, and I don't know how we would get this data, but I'm interested to see, like in the U.S. where all these events are rolling out now, what will the attendance be for these events when you compare to 2019 attendance for the same event? And so I know most of the events that are rolling out are companies that are event companies. They have a very important need to get these events out because that's their business, and they have literally gone a year and a half without revenue pretty much for a lot of them. So it's essential for their business to get revenue in. But I do wonder about the comorbidity thing or just the general concern. What is that level? So how many people are going to show up compared to 2019 for these ones in 2021? Will that, how many people feel the way I feel? And it's like, I just want to go to something. And could it even be the opposite where there's a huge rush in 2021 and a deflation in 2022 where people kind of like, okay, I did it. I got out and did something. And then now I don't necessarily need to do as much in 2022. I don't think that's logical. I think probably more people are concerned right now and they're going to play it slow. There's not necessarily a need to do it. So I would say probably the attendance show over show might be down from 2019 on any given show. And then probably will increase a little bit in 2022. And then in 2023 will be, back to what we hope would be normal. But I do think that's going to be market by market. I think certain countries and um, certain markets are generally feel different about this whole situation than others. So yeah, so um, yeah, this live has been more of a conversation, less of an action item focused event. If this is the first time you've watched us, a lot of times we are talking specifics. So in this case, I think we have a few tips, maybe a few suggestions, but I think it's also just a bigger picture, like taking a step back and like, let's just think about this. And also for people who may have a different perspective, like understand that there are different situations going on in the world. You may not ever think about that because it doesn't pertain to you necessarily, but just we just wanted to talk about it. Like not everybody's in the same situation. If you watch the Euros, right? So the Euros, the soccer or football event, it's a huge event. I love it, So I'm a huge fan, and I've been watching all the games. In Hungary, I believe Hungary has. and this could be wrong. I've watched so many games, but I think in Hungary they allowed full stadiums, like 70,000 people. So every person had to have um, a vaccine card, so proving that they had two vaccine doses. Everybody had to go through this process and go in, but they literally 70,000 people. Most of the stadiums are at like 25 to 50%. Um, yeah, so I mean, it's truly like all over the world. It has dealt with this in different ways. Is currently dealing with it in different ways. There's different issues in different countries that are evolving constantly. Um, yeah, so if you are focusing on that global audience or multi country audiences, you have to keep this in mind. And just because something is like so obvious to you doesn't mean that it's obvious to everyone else. So yeah, so I think this was an interesting conversation. I hope you found some value in it. Hope you will, at least consider some of the ideas that we suggested about maybe thinking strategically about how you're going to collect lead data at an event, how you're going to communicate to those people at an event, and then how you're going to follow up. Um, it's just really, it's all up to you at the end of the day. There is no one solution, but just don't go off and just book an event without thinking these things and without also thinking of other people and how they're going to be expecting things to happen, which is tough because you don't know that. Like you're having to put yourself in the mindset of everyone else. But also, will people show up to the events, right? So will the attendance be as expected, or will it be significantly lower? So those are all risks you have to take. But I think if you're strategic about it, you can get the most value out of it. And we hope that we see you at an event soon as well. So I did you want to have any final thing to say, Simon?
Nothing from me. I'll leave
Okay,
it up to you.
perfect. Well, I want to thank everybody that joined us today. I hope that if you like talking digital marketing, lead generation, everything, as I said at the beginning, please subscribe to our channel. If you want to get notifications when we go live or when we post videos, please click the notification bell icon and you will receive a notification when we post content. Um, I hope that in our next conversation, we're going to be digging back into a little bit more um, specific campaign focused, lead generation focused topics, and hope to see you then. So have a good day. Bye.